Hi, and welcome back to episode 3 of Mini Mike Politics, a show that covers the fundamentals of government functions and political theories to give a new outlook on current social issues and foreign policy. Today, we are covering political parties and elections, something that has been relevant forever, but was especially relevant in these past 2 years with the election years coming up. In modern US politics, problems are usually solved by two types of organizations: interest groups and political parties. Political parties are of people with similar interests who work together to create and implement policies and do so by gaining control over the government by winning elections. Parties are responsible for many things, however, they are primarily responsible for guiding proposed laws through Congress and informing party members on how they should vote. Political parties are organizations that try to directly influence public policy through its members who seek to win and hold public office. Their these positions are critical. Their positions on critical issues are presented in documents known as party platforms. In contrast, interest groups are not generally affiliated with any political party and have no trouble with working with either major party. Additionally, interest groups usually work indirectly to influence leaders. Despite their differences, the three things that they have in common are that there are lots of them. They have they all have opinions on what should be done, and they all have a desire to influence policy. It is theorized that the formation of self-interest groups in societies, or factions, is inevitable. As individuals start working together, factions are how they protect themselves from the government. In the United States, interest groups and political parties are two of the most easily identified forms of factions. Changes made by the United States as a country have been mirrored by the political parties as they have sought to shift their coalitions to establish and maintain power across the nation, and as party leadership changes. This means that the structure and behavior of modern parties are largely parallel to the social demographic and geographic divisions within the US today. Going back into the history of political parties, national political parties did not exist in the early years of the US. Most politics during the time were local and based on elite politics, limited suffrage, and oh my gosh, property. After the US emerged from the Revolutionary War, a rift emerged between the two groups that had very different views about the future of US politics. The US had a system of government dominated by the two different philosophies since the beginning: the Federalists, who favored the idea of a stronger, more centralized republic that had greater control over regulating the economy, and the Anti Federalists, who preferred a more confederate system built on state equality and autonomy. After this came two loosely affiliated party coalitions. The Federalists and the Democratic Republicans soon emerged. The Federalists eventually collapsed due to the regional tensions that eroded the party's ability to um, coordinate elites. Meanwhile, the Democratic Republican Party eventually divided over whether national resources should be focused on economic and mercantile development or on promoting populist issues that would help the common man. The second political party system's beginnings had been marked with the splitting of the Democratic Republicans and the formation of two new parties: the Democratic Party, who advocated for the common people and championed westward expansion, and opposed a national bank, and the Whig Party, who proposed that the national government should encourage economic development. The formation of the Democratic Party marked an important shift in US politics. The change also marked the birth of the new first modern political party in any democracy. It also changed the way party politics was and still is conducted. The party also perfected an existing spoils system where the support for the party during elections was awarded with jobs in the government bureaucracy after victory. These men were leaders of political machines, which are organizations that secured votes for votes for the party's candidates or supported the party in either ways. Furthermore, the Democratic Party emphasizes personal politics rather on promoting specific issues. The growing power of the industrialists who preferred greater national authority combined with the increasing tensions between northern and southern states over slavery led to the rise of the Republican Party. Every political actor and all citizens have the ability to determine for themselves whether one or the two parties meet their needs and provides an appealing set of policy opinions for whether another option is preferable. Political parties are formed as alternates to the um, as alternates to the Republican Democratic parties are known as third parties or minority parties. Famous third parties in history include the Populist Party of 1892, the Progressive Party of 1912, and the New Progressive Party of 1948, and the Dixiecrats of 1948. They were all run by charismatic leaders and failed to gain any support among the electorate once their leader left. And once the leader left, their party structures collapsed and were eventually pulled back into one of the existing parties. However, currently, some third parties still stand. Even though they do not win any elections, they have managed to secure representatives in local governments and have the potential to sway election results. As of January 25th, there are only three major minority parties that are still recognized in most states and have secured a spot on the ballot. These parties include the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and the Constitution Party. So, what exactly is wrong with the two party system? Party polarization has long been a lingering factor of American politics. To quote Pew Research, Republicans and Democrats have increasingly viewed not only just the opposing party, but also the people in that party that have a negative light. And growing shares in each party now describe those in other parties as more close minded, dishonest, immoral, and unintelligent than other Americans. You can find the full article in the description of this episode. However, this poses many problems which have all appeared in the issues of the history of political parties in the United States. First of all, the ballot having few parties to vote for, realistically speaking, only two on the list of parties on the ballot will win, that being the Democratic and the Republican parties. Which makes voters feel forced to choose rather than selecting a candidate who accurately represents their views. Secondly, the two party systems often lead to extreme partisanship, as having only two main sides makes compromise harder, forcing the political climate to become more divided and competitive. This also applies to democracy and all the problems that come with it. As a reminder, a true democracy must have most of these factors. This includes free, fair, and competitive elections, adherence to the rule of law, an independent judiciary and legislative branch, an independent media, political pluralism, protection of human rights, and transparency and accountability to constituents. There are many criticisms of democracy. That being said, there are many criticisms of democracy, such as there is with when it comes to a two-party system. Many of these criticisms include stability. With frequent elections, democracies can lack stability and consistency, and different administrations can have force courses of effects on legislation. Many democracies also experience gridlock, which is with so many checks and balances, which is the division of powers between the government. So most democracies actually, they have the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. And with all these checks and balances, each, let me break this one down really quick because if you don't know basic government structure, this one gets kind of confusing. Checks and balances and gridlock that won't really make sense. So essentially, checks and balances refers to the fact that each branch of the government has different powers that can ensure that one branch, like Congress or the legislative, doesn't have all the power and they can't take it and run. So one way that they keep checks and balances on each other is that Congress has the power of the purse. Or the legislative branch. Um, and they are responsible for, you know, they they have power responsibility. They can coin money, do all of this, they can wage war, and they have to ensure you've probably seen this all around the news, like this pops up a lot in the news. Congress has to approve something that anything like let's use this as an example. Selecting like a head of any like departments, any like official governmental departments like the Department of Justice. Congress, when the president chooses a new head for that department, Congress has to approve it. And sorry, when the president chooses their cabinet, Congress has to approve all of those new people, which is one example of checks and balances and to ensure that one branch doesn't have all the power. So, with so many checks and balances, it can be difficult for bipartisan agreement on legislation, particularly in emergencies, which is what gridlock is. Moving on, political polarization um, refers to the increase in ideological values and ideas between parties, which can which when political polarization happens, especially within a party, it tears apart the party. And sometimes you'll have like another great schism of 1054 on your hands. You never know, but politically, but that hasn't happened in the United States yet, but there have been instances that have hinted to that. And this article that I have linked in the description to Pew Research, they do a good job of explaining political polarization and how its effects have influenced the United States politics, especially now, as that becomes an especially like a huge problem. Lastly, to end it off with, uneducated, misinformed constituents or politicians can tear apart a democracy and can is one of the few biggest criticisms of democracy. In a democracy, you do not have to be educated or have high status to vote or be a politician. Many critics warn that uneducated people can undermine positive governments. Simply speaking, the lack of political like knowledge, I forgot the word, that's on me. But the lack of political knowledge can influence like your wantingness to vote, which is something that we're gonna get into for the next episode, where we're really gonna focus on voting and elections and how the electoral college works and why, and we're going to look at many different demographics of voting because especially now, um we see the youth, like young adults between the age of 18 and 24, seriously like pull back from voting, and many of that is due to party polarization. So we're going to look more into that in the next episode. And this episode was very dense, and that is my apologies. My laptop is right here. We have a whole document filled of stuff to go. So, thank you so much for listening in. See you next time.